Right side.
I never intend to do a long-term gun test. It's kind of a dumb way to review, to be honest. It's inefficient. Takes too much ammunition, too much time, of course, too much gas, too many hard drives to store the footage, on. And in the end, I don't think a lot of guys really care. They don't. But sometimes with all the other stuff I got going on here in TMP, it just happens.
There's one.
So here it goes. The gun on the table has about 3 years of
Smith
testing
and Wesson
complete
TRR8.
here in TMP.
We love this gun.
That's right.
Got 4 more.
First
boss.
outing was in October 2010 when crew member PFI dude and myself took 2 of these guns out and ran it in my trench warfare drill.
That's authority.
That's where we set up steel targets. We're running a lot, reloading fast a lot, timing ourselves. It's great fun. And it reveals a lot of great data for tabletop review.
That's weird. It is.
Yeah, almost 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, since then, the gun on the table has had about 700 rounds put through it. PFI dude's gun has had, I think, over 2,000 rounds put through it. And the reason it's important is because of what I'm getting ready to say.
That 357.
With this background, maybe it has just a little bit of credibility.
5 rounds.
The revolver sitting there in front of the camera is badass.
Nice.
It is a Smith and Wesson TRR8 model 327. If you're interested, SKU 170269. Now, my video review here will also serve for the nearly identical
Offhand TRR8
Performance Center
357.
Smith and Wesson R8 SKU number 170292. And yes, they're badass. We love them. Absolutely
Nice.
love them. But I'm going to start the review off with a question. It goes something like this. Do you know how this gun came into being?
I'm gonna pop.
Why did Smith and Wesson make the R8 or the TRR8? I think a lot of guys think that, you know, Smith just wanted to throw a tactical revolver out in the mix, and, you know, kind of create a new genre. But that isn't the case. The real story goes something like this. It is a law enforcement specific gun. Entry teams approached Smith and Wesson to build it, namely for the point man on the entry team. Now, as you may know, this dude is going to be carrying a 3/4 or full-length ballistic shield, and usually, because of weight, SAWC, he's not running a subgun or a shotgun, he's running a pistol. In days past, that's been a SIG, a Glock, H&K, Smith & Wesson M&P, maybe a 1911. But these teams found out that in certain situations, with certain maneuvers and certain constrained areas, the dude would fire his pistol and the slide would smack that ballistic shield and it would cause a stoppage. And so the SWAT teams came to Smith & Wesson and said, hey, can you build us a revolver that can do what a 1911 does? Perhaps with more power. And there you have it. This gun was born. So when we jump right into philosophy of use, this is an entry gun. And I think that's kind of cool. It was a purpose-built entry gun for the point man on an entry team. You know, local, county, state, federal, whoever. That's what it's put together for. And understanding that will make you understand the design, and perhaps a better word is appreciate the design a little bit better, especially when we talk about firepower. So when we talk about application, philosophy of use, I still think it's an awesome option for just that. An entry team. Hopefully a for constitutional law enforcement agency. And I would say the next philosophy of use for this gun would be home defense. Actually, I think it's an outstanding choice for home defense. One, because it's so powerful. Remember, it's a 357 Magnum, and that is a very proven man-stopper in law enforcement and also in the responsible civilian community as well. Lots of statistics will prove that. Also has light integration on this TRR8. And you might ask, what is the difference between the R8 and the TRR8? Let's knock that out of the way real quick before we press on with the home defense discussion. Well, here you go.
454.
Smith & Wesson catalog. On the bottom is the one we're looking at right now, model 327 TRR8, tactical revolver, 8-rounder. Yeah, it's got removable rails on the bottom of the barrel, and it has a removable optic rail, and it has a cutout in the barrel, or the ejector shroud. The R8 has a solid ejector shroud, and it has a fixed tactical rail under the barrel. The top rail, I think, is removable. So there you go. They both have the performance center trigger with a trigger stop, tuned to action, all the stuff you're seeing right there. That's the difference. They're basically the same gun. Oh yeah, there is another difference. I think the R8 has polygonal rifling. I could be off, and this has standard rifling. So you can shoot lead with the TRR8. Back to home defense. Slap your rail on if you're running a TRR8, Model 327, and you can integrate a light, identify your threat. I like that. I think any home defense weapon should have that capability. How about duty gun if you're an officer?
Beautiful.
I wouldn't be so sure about that because the gun's kind of heavy, even though it's a Scandium frame gun,
Maybe not tonight, but
which
sometime.
goes back to the application originally intended for the gun. The entry team, they wanted it to be as light as possible, so they went with Scandium. Makes sense now? Because the guy's holding it probably single-handed, maybe resting it through a firing port on the shield, whatever, next to the shield more likely. Yeah, that's why they didn't go with steel, I think. But as a duty gun, I think that's too heavy. I ain't carrying it. I'll be going with a semi-auto for that. But some guys could, if they can integrate such a large-sized gun. This is an M, as in November, framed revolver from Smith. That's a big gun, as you can see. Here is a Model 686P, previously reviewed. Highly beloved here in the Nutnfancy project for size comparison. 4-inch barrel versus 5-inch barrel, if I'm not mistaken. Very similar in size. Big guns, though. Totally. So, duty gun, I would say, probably not. Plus, I'd rather have a Glock carrying a lot more rounds. That's just me. How about competitive or recreational? Competitive, totally. Totally. I think some guys run this in IPSC, USPSA, I-Corps. Maybe a better gun for that application would be this. The 627 V-Comp. Yeah, so that's going to be a 47-ounce steel-framed gun. It's compensated, 5-inch barrel. That, to me, is a better competition gun. It's going to stay on target more. Now, if you're holding the gun up for long periods of time, I'd go with that one. Back to the trench warfare drill, though, when we go into recreational discussion. I think maybe one reason I tested this gun so long is because I love shooting it. Yeah, PFI dude too. I mean, every chance we got to integrate the TRR8 into our shooting, and I got lots of footage if I can find it. We do it. You know, at least 700 rounds. I really didn't keep track. I was just kind of going through my mind. It could have well over 1,000. I mean, I shot the gun a lot, and PFI dude actually competes with his, so it sees a lot more rounds than this particular one does. We'll go into durability and reliability down the road here. It's a fun gun to shoot, though. It's very smooth, very soft recoiling, especially with the 38 specials. But if you want to rock and roll with 357 mags, it's also pretty soft shooting, being such a large frame gun. Very nice. I really, really enjoy it. How about this? WROL choice without rule of law. No. Just too big, dude. Too big. Rounds limited. I know it's 8. It's comparable to a 1911. Absolutely. We'll discuss that. I would say no. And then finally, for POU discussion, ripping through this review. If you live in a locale that is rounds limited, or if they have restrictions on semi-auto firearms, bang, TRR8. I think that is a very smart choice for it. Very smart. End of POU.
Glove hang up there.
Once again, it is lighter, much lighter, by I think, what do we say, 10 ounces versus a steel-framed counterpart. But that's not to say it's super light at 37 ounces or super small, as you can tell. That being said, it feels very good in hand. It's very manageable with a lot of different hand sizes, as we'll see in ergonomics. The width is substantial because that cylinder is packing 8 rounds. That's going to be a bigger cylinder. That's just the way it is. You know, can you integrate that into your system going back to POU? I don't know, dude. Depends. I do like semi-autos for their flatness, for their firepower, the quick reloads. We'll talk about that with this one too. But the balance and feel for this particular gun in the Scandium frame, I would say, is superb. And as promised, firepower. You're looking at it right now. 8 rounds. Going back to the original intent of this gun, perhaps a team said, hey, we want it to have the firepower or close to it of a 1911. Now, standard 1911 is going to be running a 7-round mag plus 1. Most 19s are going to be running 1911s 8 plus 1. So it'd beat it by 1 round. But 8 rounds of 357 Magnum in a revolver is substantial. Now, these are loaded into moon clips, as you can see, and this is my recommended way of feeding your R8 or TRR8. Totally. As you can see, the cylinder is inlet, so those moon clips sit flush. Okay, and I'll just drop these in and bring them right out so you can see. One thing you're going to see right here, and you probably saw way back in October 10, is those 8 rounds sometimes will shift around a little bit, so you might have to finagle them in and kind of jostle them so they'll line up. It's kind of a disadvantage of 8 rounds versus 5 or 6, which will pop in a lot more readily. But there you go. When you get practiced and you get good, it comes quicker and your technique is correct. So like you're putting your fingers over the moon clip like that so you can guide them in. It'll come. We got much better at it as we shot it more. Not that I'm demoing that right now. But when you get practice, you can dump that moon clip out so quick and charge it again very quickly. Word to the wise though, and as you've seen in our drills, take this cylinder, turn it upside down, have gravity help you, slap your ejector rod, really rip it out. Although you'll find, especially with chrome plated cases like this Remington Golden Saber, they'll fall right out. And then turn it back up, have gravity help you, recharge it. 8 rounds of 357 is very impressive. It's a fight stopper.
Nice.
Totally is. And I love the moon clips. And before I forget, I would recommend using the Smith and Wesson moon clips. Don't get any aftermarket ones. I used some that I bought from Brownells, and when I tried to pop the casings out, I'll show you that here in a sec,
Oh, you were out.
it bent.
Yep.
So use the tempered steel ones directly from Smith and Wesson. They're pretty affordable. Don't mess around. How about accuracy? I would say it is excellent. But I will also say this is I didn't shoot this gun as good as I wanted to. Most of the shooting testing that we did here in TMP on this gun was practical in nature, like running the trench warfare drill. We did a shoot with Troy Industries, ran a TRR8. We ran it on the plate racks. We did the eat lead drill with the TRR8s. And I don't know what it was, but I was not as good with it as I wanted to be. And the funny thing is with other revolvers like the 686P,
Excellent.
classic Smith and Wessons, I can get it done. I don't know if it was a sight or what. We'll look at that in ergonomics, but just heads up. Here's the first target. I only got 2 because over the years, I guess I lost them. 16 yards. I can't remember if I was standing or sitting. I was just popping 2 rounds at each of these. 357 mags, Starfire, Hollow Point. Those are good groups. That's representative, I think, of what the gun is capable of. I think a lot of guys could do that at 25 yards, but from what I know and having shot the Model 327, I'm going to say it's about a 2-inch gun at 25 yards. What? I shoot an inch group at 50 yards, nothing. You're a lot better than I am, then. That's all I'm going to say. This is shooting single action. These are 158 FMJs. Decent group, 16 yards. I'm thinking these were standing. Good group there. Nice group there. 2 inches at 25 yards. There's your accuracy. I have heard reports from a ransom rest about 1.5 inches at 50 yards with special ammunition that the gun likes. Very accurate. I will say excellent accuracy. And this is probably a good point to bring up the barrel construction on your R8 TRR8. It's actually a tensioned barrel. So this is not a one-piece barrel. It's actually a shroud over your barrel, and there's your tensioning screw here. You can actually rest this barrel on a rest without disrupting its accuracy. unlike a single piece barrel, like the 686 I just showed you. I didn't really have occasion to do that as I can remember. Maybe I did, but it's kind of a cool thing. And since we're looking at it, I'm going to talk about a little reliability issue well known with the TRR8s, R8s, and that is earlier models, when they issued them, had problems with that tensioning screw, and this barrel shroud came loose. Actually, PFI dude's gun did that, and he had to ship it back to Smith and Wesson, and he had a quick turnaround. They fixed it. He has had zero problems with it since then. Zero problems. If you have that with your gun, don't try to fix it yourself. You can tell that takes a specialty tool, and I will say specialty torquing. Let Smith do it. It has a lifetime warranty on it. No big deal. A lot of gun manufacturers have little things with their guns that happen through the years. Be patient with them. Let them have a chance to address it with their warranty service. I think you'll be happy if you do that. Another thing with accuracy you might want to consider is you do have an optic rail option. PFI dude runs his all the time. I never run mine. I'm using it pure irons because that's the way I enjoy shooting it. And I'm not a competitor with a gun, but you could be. So I just have mine removed. You can put it on. If you do put it on, just like this rail underneath, make sure you Loctite those suckers. Just shoot them loose and lose those screws. And if you do lose the screws, which you probably will sometime, just call Smith & Wesson. I'm sure they'll hook you up. They're really good that way. On to features and ergonomics. I raved about this gun, right? No. 686p. Remember that review about 2.5 years ago? Love this gun. Well, all the ergos of this gun are present in that gun because it's a full-size Smith & Wesson revolver. The grip is excellent. Yeah, it's made of rubber. It's kind of grippy. Can grab clothing. All the stuff I've said before. Exposed backstrap here. But it's still excellent. It just feels great in hand. And it can accommodate a lot of different grip sizes. If you are considering this gun for home defense and you have a lady in the house, you might have her hold it, the gun I'm talking, and see if it fits her. You might be surprised to find out that she likes it, even with a large double action reach, which you're seeing right here. Okay, so for a lot of hand sizes, maybe that's a long reach. I don't have a problem with it, of course, large size hands. Great grip. There's your cylinder latch right here, very standard, angled, love it, no issues with that at all. The trigger on these guns is tuned by the Performance Center. This one breaks at 4.5 pounds, single action. Not really sure what it is double action because my trigger scale doesn't go up that high. But it is smooth. It's not the smoothest double action trigger I have, but it's doable. And PFI dude and myself were talking about it, and I was like, well, would you change your trigger? He's like, well, I did. I had a Yoda stone it for me, but I put some Wilson Combat springs in it and I didn't like it. I uninstalled them. So there you go. I mean, he shoots a lot too, so I respect his opinion. And I would agree with that. I mean, the trigger on this, and you guys know I'm a trigger snob. It wasn't like so insane that I got to fix this trigger. I'll just leave it. Shoots well. I mean, 4.5 pound single action, I'm good with that. I might do what he did and just smooth it up a little bit. So take any grittiness out of it and let me remind myself what it's like. It's still a nice trigger. Still a nice trigger. It's not bad at all. Standard trigger guard there. Big old cylinder. We showed you that. And it's a pretty strong design, I think. And while we're here, let's look at this. Because since this is a Scandium frame design, I talked to TMPers like 3 years ago, and they were asking me, have you had any flame cutting issues on your TRR8? And the answer is, from what I can ascertain, is no. Then again, this has not seen thousands and thousands of rounds. It has a flame shield right here above the forcing cone, you can see. Trying to get that as close as you can so you can check it out. Talked to PFI, he's had none on his either, and he has a lot more rounds than this gun. So no top strap issues of it breaking, no reliability issues at all for that. There have been reports of light primer strikes out of the R8, TR8 series. We did not experience any of that. Apparently, here at the bottom, there is a tensioning. Make sure your spring tension screw, I think, down here in the grip is set so your hammer spring is properly seated. You might want to check that if you haven't. Or, better yet, send it back to Smith. They'll hook you up. Ergonomics. The sights. I would give the sights maybe about a 7 out of 10, maybe a 6 out of 10 because they're low contrast for me. And we found shooting them, I'm talking the TRR8 in this version because that's what this model is, of course. The gold bead will wash out in bright sunlight. Especially shooting against steel, I would really like to have a high, contrast fluorescent option. The good news is they're standard, fully adjustable Smith and Wesson ones, and you will need that with this gun because it's, obviously a 38 special 357 type, and your loads could highly vary. I found this hammer, it has some sharp edges, and I actually kind of chamfered it with both a file, and then I finished it off with 400 grit automotive sandpaper. Yeah, checking that out. I threw some skateboard tape on here because I hold my gun weird, like that. Works for me. I can shoot good that way. Don't mind it. And that's about it. It's simple. It's a revolver. Ergonomically, there's really not that much to talk about. And there's really not that much to talk about for field strip and maintenance except this. It's what I've said before in my revolver reviews. It's a lot of barrels to clean. This is your main barrel, of course. I'm joking around, but these are like barrels too, and you got to clean those as well. Yeah, cleaning the revolver is just kind of a pain. And then you got to get in here with your lead removal cloth, clean off that forcing cone. That's important too because you don't want it to be binding as your cylinder rotates. And I can't ever remember cleaning this at all. Maybe somewhere along there I did. You can see your forcing cone cylinder gap right there. I don't remember cleaning it. I don't, or lubricating it. I probably dropped some, I don't know, Militech in there or something. That's about it though. I mean, as far as maintenance goes, it's simple, Simon. Accessories versatility. Moon clips is what I recommend. However, the competitive world has speed loaders for this gun, or actually any in-framed 8-shot revolver that Smith & Wesson makes. One website is 5starfirearms.com. They have billet speed loaders. They have loading blocks. Kind of cool. If you want to go that route, you can. This is the one we used, though, in all of our testing. It was just a standard Smith & Wesson moon clips. And then we used this. This is the North Mountain moon clip holder 2-stacker with a Kydex retention on it. And the way that works is just like you're seeing right here. We loved it. The question is, would you use this in a defensive environment, Nutton? Well, we did run a lot, and that's another thing that we test is the gear, accessories, all that stuff. I would say, yeah, I would. Knowing what I know now, as long as I'm not planning on dumping or going upside down and doing some really radical foot maneuvers. But in our running guns, it held pretty tight. And then it's a real quick reload. I mean, you're just fishing that off the peg, dumping the rounds, putting the moon clip in. Much quicker, I think, than a reloader, a speed loader. With my expertise, where I'm at. I mean, you got a speed loader cut out here, you can totally use it. But like I said earlier, when you're practiced, you can rip off the reloads with the TRR8. I mean, this sucker loads really, really fast. What doesn't load quickly, though, are the moon clips when they're empty. That, my friend, is a pain in the butt, and you're going to need, speaking of accessories, this thing. A demooner tool. So what that will do is when you have empty shell casings in your moon clip, which hopefully you didn't just pitch in the dirt, you put it in a douche pouch or something like that, you'll just pop that on there and you'll start working this tool to pop those, do it in pairs by the way, pop those rounds out of the moon clip. Okay, and when you do that, it's been so long since I've used this, I'm probably doing it wrong, but when you do that, save your shell casings, don't bend your moon clips, reload them. You know, loading them is a piece of cake. You're just pushing the round in the moon clip. There you go. That would be the first recommended accessory I would say for your TRR8 or R8. This right here. And then perhaps the sights. You may like the sights better on the R8 or just want to retrofit these. It's not show-stopping. I mean, you ever own a gun like that where it has some nagging issues, but you're like, you know, do I really want to spend money on this to fix it? Yeah, it's kind of like that. So the answer is probably no. May just keep it like this forever. Your holster situation for these very large Smith & Wessons may be an issue. I don't think there's a lot of specific built holsters for it. We used universal ones. So kind of like the old TAC Force ones you've seen us running, maybe a Black Hawk, you know, a Spec Ops holster, something like that, and it works fine. You know, it's a large gun. You put a light on it, then your life is going to get even more complicated if you want to holster it. I think a vertical bandolier holster will definitely accommodate that, but that's more along the hunting lines, right? For a hunting philosophy of use, which I forgot to mention, you totally could use this gun on that. Don't forget you have the rails. You can put a laser, a light on it. Highly recommended. And here's a really cool thing about the TRR8 or R8 is that how many guns out of the box are configured like this. So you got 8 rounds of full power 357 mag. You're configured with a light. You're configured with a top optics rail, basically a top Picatinny rail. There's not too many guns that fall into that category, and it opens up a lot of options. Speaking of hunting, for instance, you could put a 2.5 power handgun scope on it and get some really long range shots out of the gun. You could hunt out to 100 yards with 357 Magnum in those locales that would, you know, permit that. I think most of the competitors and recreational shooters are running red dots on it, though. I know PFI is running it, and he loves that. That's all I'll say on accessories. Value. Well, the plot thickens. It is a Smith and Wesson. It is a Scandium framed revolver. It is made entirely in the United States of America, and it's expensive. All Smith and Wesson revolvers are expensive, dude. Don't know what to tell you. You know, I have heard these guns going used for around $700, maybe even less. I think if you found it for that and it's in excellent condition, even if it has a loose barrel shroud, even better, because all you have to do is ship it back to Smith and Wesson. They'll hook you up free of charge, and then you have a basically an $1,100 revolver for $700. Does it represent good value? I'll let you answer that. You know, there's a lot of great guns out here, but this is kind of a specifically built entry weapon like we discussed earlier. That in itself, by the way, in addition to its very authoritative looks, lends second kind of cool to the TRR8, says me. I mean, that is a sick looking revolver. Would you want that pointed at you? Yeah, me either. I'd say value's good, but it's US produced, you know how that goes. We've talked along the way about durability. The Scandium frame I think will hold up well. I can't really give you a definitive answer on the flame cutting issue. You know, the other gun we talked about, it has no issues. He hasn't noticed it. Remember the lifetime warranty, though. If it's an issue, you know, send it back. That steel framed 627B comp might be a better competitive option if you're really worried about that, if you want to stick with Smith and Wesson. Talked about the loose barrel shroud. That is easily fixed by the company. And I think the latest ones, and I should say probably 2011 on, I haven't heard any issues with them. Light primer strikes, we have not seen that at all. In-frame durability. What's that mean? Well, it's a large, you know, it's a large size frame. It can absorb the impact of 357 Magnums day in, day out. You know, thicker top strap, bigger dimensions. It's able to withstand all the recoil generated. How about track record overall? Well, you're looking and watching the Nutnfancy project, and I just go off of the data we've generated. You know, we have, between the two guns tested for this review, thousands of rounds, and I'm going to give it an extremely high likability scale. Highly recommended. There's really not a lot of 8-shot 357 Magnum revolvers around, especially as light as this one. You know, there's a whole bunch of awesome Smith & Wesson options. You know, just dig in their catalog. You know, 357 mag though, with having all that, you know, the full size. By the way, I love that 5-inch barrel. Few options. I love the gun. It is highly recommended. It is an entry weapon that can serve in a bunch of different POUs. That's my review. See ya.